Never too early to do a fantasy football mock draft. And Sports Illustrated recently released our first one of the 2021 season. Here with me, two participants, SI fantasy football analyst Corey Parson and Michael Fab. Fellas, we did a small little mock draft together, a 10 rounder. Fab, some interesting things that caught all of our eyes. One being Justin Jefferson, the second wide receiver drafted. Devontae Adams was the first. What are your thoughts on the Vikings second year playmaker?
Yeah, I was surprised there. Ninth overall pick and the second wide receiver off the board. It wasn't Nuke Hopkins. It wasn't Michael Thomas. It wasn't Stephon Diggs. It wasn't Tyreek Hill. It was Justin Jefferson. And I get it. He was tremendous during his rookie campaign. When you look at his numbers, he had 6 targets in the first 2 weeks combined, at which point a lot of fantasy managers actually dropped him. But from week 3 to week 17, he was the wide receiver 4. So maybe this is not such a crazy selection after all. Not sure I would have done it, Bill, but it's certainly eye-opening. Justin Jefferson clearly has a very bright future in National Football League and in fantasy football.
From a rookie wide receiver to a rookie running back. Corey, let me ask you about Jonathan Taylor. He was the 7th running back taken in the first round, but he was the first player among all second-year players. Do you think Taylor should have gone ahead of guys like Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, and even Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Obviously, the running back position is very important in fantasy football. And he was the second-year running back that kind of, showed the most coming down the stretch, even though we did see Akers and Dobbins pick it up. But if you look at the last 6 games of the season for one Jonathan Taylor, listen, he scored 8 touchdowns, every game over at least 75 yards rushing, had one performance with 150 yards rushing, and had that monster 250-yard rushing game in the playoffs. So listen, he's on a team with a very good offensive line. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We see the retirement of Phil Rivers, but we understand that Frank Reich and that team is built to run the football. So I think he can have a lot of success next season. He was very highly drafted, so I think that Jonathan Taylor is definitely worthy of being the first second-year player taken.
Corey, you had a top 5 pick, and I thought your first 3 rounds very interesting. You went 3 straight running backs with Clyde Edwards-Helaire falling to you in the 3rd round. Was that just too good a value to pass up at that point, or did you want to start your draft with 3 rushers?
No, I kind of was on a situation where I was going to just let the draft come to me and obviously get one of those big early picks. I think you have a chance to get one of those backs. Coming back in that 2nd and 3rd round, I was just trying to find the best value on the board and happened to be at the running back position. And building strong at running back is never really a bad thing to do. Wide receivers tend to pop on the waiver wire. You'll find some guys, a la Justin Jefferson, but running backs are very difficult, so you want to get them into your mix. Now, with that being said, Edwards-Helaire was a guy that was going as a top 7 pick last season. Now, it wasn't good, but you know what? It's Andy Reid. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. So the young man gets his legs under him. I think a 3rd-round selection on him would be insane.
Paz, let me go back to you on the 4 or 5 round turn. You took Amari Cooper, and then 2 rounds later, you grabbed his quarterback, Dak Prescott. Is that a strategy that you try to focus on, maybe pairing up a quarterback with a wide receiver, or not just a happy coincidence?
I think it's more like a happy accident, right? And I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'll take that all day long. What was surprising is that Dak Prescott fell to me. He was one of the top quarterbacks in fantasy football before he went down with that unfortunate injury against the Giants. In fact, he was averaging over 27 fantasy points per game. He was the QB9 in this draft. I got him in round 7, and I'll gladly pair him with Amari Cooper, who was my 4th round pick. And Cooper still had a pretty good season. He didn't have an elite season, but keep in mind, he was catching passes from Ben DiNucci, Garrett Gilbert, and Andy Dalton, not Dak Prescott for most of the campaign. And Cooper still averaged nearly 15 fantasy points per game. So I will take him as a wide receiver 2 in that 4th round of a 12-team draft all day long. And as for Dak, listen, I know there's concerns about him coming back from that horrific injury, but if he comes back and he's 100%, and I expect him to be, that could end up being an absolute steal.
When it comes to fantasy football, it's never really over, especially here at Sports Illustrated, where we have all year long strategy advice and updates like this for our mock drafts. Check out more of our fantasy football coverage by going to si.com/fantasy.